Somewhere in the Sahara, on a wall of bare rock, there is a painting of people swimming. Arms out, legs kicking, bodies suspended in water that does not exist. The nearest permanent water is hundreds of kilometers away. Before we go further, do something for me. Close your eyes for a second and actually picture it. 9 million square kilometers of sand gone, rivers cutting through where the dunes are now, canopy, rain, frogs at night. What do you see? Paradise, farmland, a continent that finally got what it deserved. Hold that image. I want you to remember it in about 10 minutes because you are going to feel very differently about it. And tell me where you are watching from right now. Drop your city in the comments. I am genuinely curious how far this is traveling tonight. Here is the part most people never learn. The Sahara becoming a rainforest is not a hypothetical. It is a rerun. Between roughly 11,000 and 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was green, not patchy, not marginal, green. Grasslands ran from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. There were lakes, there were rivers that flowed year-round, there were hippos in what is now the driest place on Earth. In central Chad, a body of water called Lake Megachad spread across an area some estimates put at 350,000 square kilometers. That is a lake roughly the size of the Caspian Sea, sitting in the middle of what we now call desert. Elephants, giraffes, crocodiles, catfish, and people, thousands of them herding cattle across a landscape that had no reason to be there. They left the paintings. At Tassili en Adjer in Algeria and at Gilf Kebir in Egypt, the rock art shows animals that need water and humans who were clearly comfortable around it. So what happened? The answer is not a meteor and it is not a volcano. It is the tilt and wobble of the planet you are standing on. Earth does not spin perfectly. Its axis wobbles like a slowing top on a cycle of roughly 23,000 years. That wobble changes where sunlight falls hardest in the northern summer. Around 11,000 years ago, North Africa was catching noticeably more summer sunlight than it does today. More heat over land pulled the African monsoon further north than it reaches now. The rain followed. But sunlight alone does not explain how green it got. Martin Clausen at the Max Planck Institute for Meteorology in Hamburg spent years modeling what happens next. Once plants take hold, they darken the ground. Dark ground absorbs more heat. More heat strengthens the monsoon. A stronger monsoon grows more plants. The Sahara in his models is not one landscape. It has two stable states, green and desert, and it can flip. Do you understand what that means? The desert you picture when you hear the word Africa is not the default setting. It is one of two settings. So the sunlight faded, the wobble moved on, and the Sahara flipped back. The question is how fast? Peter de Menockel, who worked at Columbia University and now leads the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, pulled sediment cores from the seafloor off the coast of Mauritania. Layer by layer, those cores record how much desert dust was blowing off Africa and settling into the Atlantic. His reading of the record was violent. Around 5,500 years ago, dust levels spiked, not over millennia, over a few centuries. A green continent went to sand inside a handful of human lifetimes. Stefan Kröpelin disagreed. Kröpelin, at the University of Cologne, spent decades working in the Aunianga lakes of northern Chad, a cluster of water bodies that somehow survived the drying. He drilled into Lake Yoa and found a record that told a slower story. Gradual retreat, 3,000 years of decline, not 300. Two records, two answers, both from real cores honestly read. That disagreement still has not fully closed, and it matters more than it sounds, because it is really a question about whether climate systems collapse gently or all at once. Now let us actually do the thing, let us green it. Say tomorrow the monsoon jumps north, say the rain comes back and stays. Say within a century the Sahara is closed canopy forest and that image you were holding a few minutes ago becomes real. The first thing that happens is that 11 countries stop being deserts. Mali, Niger, Chad, Sudan, Libya, Algeria, Egypt, hundreds of millions of hectares of arable land where there was nothing. Groundwater recharges. Rivers return. That is genuinely good. Hold on to that because here comes the bill. There is a dry lakebed in northern Chad called the Bidele Depression. It is the floor of that vanished Lake Megachad, and it is the single largest source of dust on the planet. Every year, wind lifts that dust and carries it west across the Atlantic. Hongbin Yu and colleagues at NASA used satellite LiDAR to measure the plume from orbit. Their estimate, about 180 million tons of dust leaving West Africa annually, and roughly 28 million tons of it landing in the Amazon basin. Inside that dust is phosphorus, about 22,000 tons of it per year. Here is why that number should stop you. The Amazon's soil is ancient and heavily leached. Rain has been washing nutrients out of it for millions of years. The rainforest loses phosphorus constantly, and it does not have a local supply to replace it. The Sahara is the supply. The largest rainforest on Earth is fertilized by the largest desert on Earth. Green the Sahara and the dust stops. Vegetation pins the soil down, the plume dies. So you build a rainforest in Africa, and you start slowly starving the one in South America. Did you expect that? Because almost nobody does. And it does not stop at the Amazon. That same dust plume rides across the tropical Atlantic as a hot, dry, elevated mass of air called the Saharan air layer. Hurricanes hate it. It injects dry air into storms and disrupts the vertical structure they need to organize. Every hurricane season, forecasters watch that plume. When it is thick, Atlantic storms struggle. Francesco Posada and other modelers have run green Sahara scenarios and found meaningful shifts in tropical storm behavior when the dust is removed. Take the dust away permanently and you have removed one of the brakes on Atlantic hurricanes. The Caribbean pays, the Gulf Coast pays, Florida pays. The dust also feeds the ocean itself. Iron in Saharan dust supports phytoplankton across parts of the Atlantic, and phytoplankton are the base of the marine food chain and a major sink for carbon. Are you starting to see the shape of it? The Sahara is not empty space, it is a component. There is one more layer, and it is the human one. A green Sahara does not stay politically neutral. Suddenly, there is water, land, and agricultural potential across borders that were drawn on the assumption that the interior was worthless. Rivers would cross national lines that have never had to negotiate over a river. The Nile alone already generates decades of tension between Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt over a single dam. Now imagine a dozen new rivers. And migration would reverse. Rudolf Kuyper and colleagues at Cologne argued that the drying of the Sahara pushed populations toward the Nile Valley, and that this concentration was part of the pressure that produced pharaonic Egypt. Sit with that. A desert forming may have helped build one of the first great civilizations. What does a desert unforming build? The last thing you should know is that this is not fiction, and it is not far away in the sense you assume. The orbital wobble that greened the Sahara is still running. It has not stopped. Current estimates put the next natural green Sahara somewhere between 10 and 15,000 years from now. And we may not wait. In 2018, Yan Li and colleagues published modeling in the journal Science suggesting that covering large areas of the Sahara with wind and solar farms would change local climate enough to increase rainfall substantially, in some regions roughly doubling it. Panels and turbines alter surface roughness and heat exchange. Rain follows, plants follow. The feedback Clausen described begins to turn. We could start this by accident, while trying to solve something else entirely. So think again about what you pictured at the start of this video. The green Sahara, rivers, canopy, rain. It is real, it has been real before, it will be real again. It just does not arrive as a gift. It arrives as a trade, and the other side of the trade is a continent away, quietly running out of phosphorus. Somewhere in the Sahara, on a wall of bare rock, there is a painting of people swimming. It was never a fantasy, it was a receipt.